So I wanted to just make a few comments before we jump into the presentation to set the stage a little bit. At our last meeting about a month ago, many of the agencies were talking about the fact that we're all facing some budget constraints. We're all looking to prioritize our measurements and our field efforts, looking for increased efficiency and potentially considering ending data collection at some sites. And that also kind of spawns a conversation about where can we collaborate? Where do we have partners or overlap as well? And so to me, that kind of leads me to want to think about how we visualize where we collect data from, where we have field sites, who's working there, and what measurements are taken. And so that was why I reached out to Bill and his team to talk to us today about the visualization tools that they've been developing. And it also made me go back to a 2001 workshop on Arctic geospatial information that Bill was a co-chair of. And if you'll indulge me,
no way.
I will read for you from that report. The specific recommendations were to organize representation of the Arctic research community, align data producers with data bot standards, develop an Arctic spatial data catalog, implement demonstration projects, and initiate data archiving and stewardship. And I think in the now 16 years since that workshop, we have made a lot of progress in those areas. We've done now some significant demonstration projects and made a lot of headway on standards and archiving and data discovery and stewardship. So I'm hopeful that we can use some of the tools that Bill will describe and that other agencies, NOAA, for example, have been investing in order to enable the agencies and the researchers to find data and to make good decisions when we do have to become more fiscally constrained and responsive to the environment in which we're working. So I will turn it over to Bill. And Bill, I'll let you introduce yourself and your other team members, if you want to mention some folks by name so that we can know who in our community is doing this work.
Sure.
Oh, hey, Renee, this is John Bergson, just joined.
Hi, John. Thank you.
All right, I'll start out with
And John, do you have access to the slides?
John, do you have access to the slides?
Well, not yet. I'll give it a try.
Okay, they're on the web. They're on the website. If you can't get them, I can download them and email them to you.
Yeah, maybe Sarah, if you can make sure that John's behind a superior firewall and can't necessarily participate in the way other people can. So we want to make sure you can see.
Yeah, I wasn't able to. The sea ice meeting, I tried all yesterday. Yeah. I tried the whole day. It didn't work, but sometimes it worked.
All right. Okay. We'll try to get you at least a copy of the slides. You can look at your.
Oh, okay, great.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey,
okay.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Bill.
Well, thank you, Renee, for that great setup. And yeah, I guess a lot has happened in the last 16 years, but there's more that could be done, perhaps. So the proverbial, you all can see my slides.
Yes.
And so I'm a research scientist at the University of Colorado. And today I'd like to present on the Arctic Research Mapping Application, or ARMAP, and the Arctic Observing Viewer, AOV. And these are two web applications funded by the National Science Foundation with software done by students at the University of Texas under Professor Craig Tweedy. And then Robbie Score is a coordinator at CH2M Hill Polar Services. And so we believe and we hope that these two apps can be helpful for you all for Arctic science planning. And so, you know, a challenge for Arctic research is knowing who is doing what, where, both within the US and internationally. It's seen as sort of fragmented. And so it can be difficult to know where the research projects are being conducted, where there are observation sites that already exist, where's the gaps and overlap, and how can we better achieve scientific objectives, and better coordinate and collaborate within budget constraints or to make things more efficient and reduce redundancies. So we share within the Arctic data community a vision of a project data life cycle, a conceptual model that spans on the left project planning through site planning, if you will, to actually end user data reuse and integration. And so this spectrum then is something that we feel best meets the needs of research scientists as well as science planners and program managers and logistics planners. So on the left is ARMAP, which is primarily for project planning, and it's a map-based tool. So envision zooming in on a hypothetical research area and seeing that dot. Each project location we define as a logistical base of operation. So envision a village or an airstrip or a base camp as a logistical base for research. And the middle is something more high resolution, where each project can have multiple observation sites, what we call data collection sites. Different types of instrumentation, essentially wherever there have been repeat measurements, towers, plots, weather stations, and marine as well, with drifting buoys or moorings or even ship tracks. And then those all link then to data sets that are actually come out of those observation sites. Each collection site can have multiple data sets, and it can sometimes take a while for those data sets to come out and be hosted appropriately by different data centers or data repositories through different catalogs and portals. The idea here is a hierarchical approach for multiple purposes and multiple end users, and linking across that spectrum. So there are different audiences and different users, therefore, and they all have different needs and questions. And so hopefully this spectrum then can answer some of these questions, such as who operates and manages existing sites, and what are they measuring, how can I contact them, in the middle, as well as what's the questions on the left and the right. So next then I'll talk about ARMAP. And so this is the Arctic Research Mapping application, the viewer. And it has over 2,700 research projects, each with one or more project locations. And those project locations here are shown as red dots. So there's a lot of coverage for the Arctic. You can zoom into different areas and pan around. And when you click on a dot, a pop-up window shows various details for that project location. The investigator name, the project title, the award number, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can also click on the different ship tracks, and these all go back some years, many years for projects and ship tracks. And this is an example of a Healy ship track in 2016. And then also in our map, if you look over here on the right, there's a few different layers for observatories and stations. And, that's by definition, almost they're, hubs of synergistic multidisciplinary research, and there's information to be had in our map about them as well. And I wanted to focus on the left now. So you can do a free text search like a Google search, or you can start browsing by filtering a number of different parameters. And so on the left, we filtered on the discipline, meteorology and climate, 190 projects. With the information that is shown in the search results table at the bottom for these 190 projects that you see as red dots on the screen. You can do complex filters, for example. You can keep going and identify which of these meteorology and climate projects are active in 2017 and funded by a different agency. And you can browse this table at the bottom or export it to Excel. And then a few other functions I want to point out. There's a print tool where you can export maps, slide ready for PowerPoint. There's a time slider to view an animation of how research has changed through time. measure distances in areas. And then also on the website there, we have public web services, live data feeds from the database where you can use the information in your own apps or databases. So, where the rubber hits the road is what is the content in ARMAP. And it's primarily NSF, as you'll see in a moment, but includes 17 other agencies. That's largely because people have come together with the Alaska Data Integration Working Group, ADIWIG, different agencies that have agreed on a way to share information that works well together. Metadata standards and best practices. And then, so there's ship tracks and research projects at these different project locations. And then for each project, there's these are most of the details and most important details for each project, including discipline, contact information, phone number, email, etc. for the PI, and links to more information, including logistics reports, project summaries, and to the data itself that's coming out. And let's see, excuse me, there we go. And so the agencies in ARMAP, it's mostly NSF. We're funded by NSF, but NSF wants us to have as broad of a perspective as possible, and we're moving more in that direction. So you can see there's quite a few from the USGS and other agencies as well. And with logistics, field logistics orchestrated by CPS, CHGM Public Services. A lot of them were funded by BASC, et cetera, or sorry, coordinated by BASC. Different disciplines in RMAP. And then a sneak peek of what's coming up with the next version of RMAP, hopefully. We're always pursuing new visualizations or new ways of presenting the information, sharing the information. And this is one with a heat map that shows where research is concentrated. Heat map of the points weighted by how many projects are at each point. So we're working on that with our students, and if there are no technical constraints, then we'll release a heat map, as well as provide now what's possible is a 3D view, kind of like Google Earth, but running in any browser. And in this visualization, I think it really helps to show where research is concentrated, because each column, the height of it is the number of projects at that location. And then you can show other variables with different colors. Not sure yet, but we're exploring the idea of having charting in there to kind of further interactively data mine all the information. So next up then is AOV in the middle.
Can I ask a question, Bill?
Sure.
About RMAP. So how does, if you wanted to enter information, do you have to be a program manager, or can you be a PI?
We're essentially a program manager, or we don't want to have to go back to each PI and bug them for information, because they're already provided that information to someone probably. And we want to bring in information in the most efficient big clumps as possible. And so we are working with the Alaska Data Integration Working Group, and or we could work with other partners, other agencies to get their information in.
Bill, I have a follow-up question. Sure. Are the data that are here only pulled from the RLIS database, so they need to have an RLIS record?
That's a good question. So the NSF records go into a database that's managed by CPS called RLIS. And that actually includes a few other agencies that are supported logistically by CPS. And that information then is fed by a web service to the University of Texas in a database that then they periodically refresh with records, project information from other agencies. Yeah. So
it's
there is a way
to insert information by working directly with UTEP.
That's right.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Sarah.
So I was just wondering if, Renee, if you reached out to, because it doesn't look like DOE was on there. Right. So So that would mean their Barrow facility is not on here, or maybe it got captured another way and isn't, but I didn't see DOE on the list. So can this group be used as a mechanism to get other agencies like ONR and U.S. Coast Guard and DOE to add their information?
I think that is a great idea. And so during International Polar Year 2007 to 2009, we made a concerted effort to include all the agency's projects during that time.
Okay.
But it's a lot of work. But I think through this group, especially if we're producing something visual that people find useful, and the different ways in which Bill showed that you can search, you could map just your agency's projects or something. We use this tool all the time when we're making presentations to the National Science Board or congressional delegations and things like that. And so if it's useful to other agencies, we would be happy to have more agencies' projects included. And so we could make that more of a focus of conversation within IARPIC and the logistics working group.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. It's more useful if it's more comprehensive, or even, for agencies' own purposes, they can take advantage of the software development that's happened if they want to share their information in a compatible way. And there's ways to share information where you don't have to start from scratch. And in fact, you don't really want to reinvent the wheel to streamline things.
And I think in a second, when Bill talks more about the Aon viewer, where you're talking about the measurements, that might be appealing to other agencies as well, as a way of sharing that level of detail.
So, the big take-home mode here is this ARMAP is for project locations or logistical basis of operation. And next we'll talk about the Arctic Observing Viewer, AOV, where we're looking at actually a higher resolution view of discrete observation sites, shown here as yellow dots, yellow squares, and there's over 13,000 observation sites here. And I'll say off the bat that it's not comprehensive really, because we've had to do a lot of effort to get information in, but it's growing, and it's a lot of information already in here. So this, for example, is a search in AOV for observation sites where the discipline is meteorology and climate. So it found 220 observation sites, data collection sites that might be towers or I'm not sure what. And in the table below, you can get the information and site level details. And, at this level of granularity, you can then look for gaps or opportunities for collaboration in a given discipline, say. The table below, shows a good deal of information. Some of those fields have already been backfilled, actually. And then you can scroll to the right to get even more information with links to project pages or data pages, that kind of thing. So yeah, a lot of the same project level information with additional site level information. And then of course, you can click on a point and get all sorts of information about that particular observation site. Scroll down the pop-up and get more. So what's an AOV? So AOV is focused on, quote, Arctic observing, which is not strictly defined, but think about repeat observations at a given site. And not all projects in ARMAP have sites in AOV because they don't meet that criteria. It is more broadly international. It was started with the idea of being broadly international. And it's been a laborious process to gather site level information because this intermediate level granularity is kind of a new idea. But there's over almost 14,000 sites. And in addition to the project level.
Bill, could you back up? Is that 14,000 sites or 14,000 so when you say sites, so that's somewhere that they're doing repeat observations. So it's more observations than that, right?
That's right.
Okay. All right. I misunderstood the first time. Okay, thanks.
those are discrete sites or multiple instrumentation assets at a given site. But then, you know, each one of those sites can have many, many more data sets. And, you know, this was started because we needed to know where the assets were and not just the data, or that sometimes takes a while for the data. So we have these initial site level details, such as initiative, think network, collection type, which is a measurement type. There's these GCMD keywords, links to information. It's meant to be high order, so because really the instrument level details are best hosted by the data centers along with the data. So agencies in AOV, again, mostly NSF, but you know, it's broad, and some of these sites some of these networks that have fewer sites are nonetheless quite important, can be. So I wanted to highlight how to search in AOV for information that might be of interest. And this is the search tool where you can, for example, select from a drop-down funding agency, and then select from another drop-down NOAA, and then hit search, and then close this box. And these are the search results of sites where it's funded or coordinated by, administered by NOAA that are in the database. And so it's not comprehensive exactly yet, but we're working with Sandy Starkweather and others to get more information in here, and there's a lot of information in here. Or initiatives, the International Tundra Experiment, the Global Terrestrial Network for Permafrost, the Back to the Future, FluxNet, EarthScope, et cetera, et cetera. And so this search interface, we are not happy with, to be honest, and we're in the process of upgrading to a new app that has a better search interface. And here's one of the problems. If you're going to search for an initiative, this is actually how you do it. Project title, contains, and then the initiative or network name. It's a little funky. Sorry about that, but we're working on it. And so this is, these are yellow squares are the sites that are part of the International Tundra Experiment. Warming plots and that kind of thing with infrastructure in place, or at least there used to be. These are collection types in AOV, covering a realm of disciplines in Arctic science. And then now we're going to search on collection type equals borehole. So these are boreholes that relate largely to the Global Terrestrial Network for Permafrost, measuring ground ice temperature with depth and more variables, that kind of thing. So, you know, AOV is a tool you can use if you, you know, I don't know, need to stop measuring data at a site, maybe you can see if there's enough data from another site or something. Yeah. This is a sneak peek of the next version of AOV with a better search and filter interface and a clustering visualization. We may keep that. We've had to go that route just because there are so many records or sites in the database, but we might be able to not use clusters. And we're adding more sites and details on a regular basis. So like we were talking about earlier with ARMAP, you know, in particular for AOV, we encourage other agencies to add their sites. And we have a collaborate page. We have down the right a guide to interoperability. We're active in the community, the Arctic data community, about interoperability, sharing information in the best ways possible. And to that end, we've created this spreadsheet where it's easier to enter information about projects or sites in ways that you can more easily share it with other people and have it be compatible or interoperable. This is an aside. I wanted to mention BAID, the Barrow Area Information Database. barrowmap.org. Specifically for the Barrow area, they have a great deal of information in their research sites viewer and some other tools, but for logistics planning the Barrow area, that's where to go. We also wanted to highlight another resource is completely unrelated to ARMAP and AOV. It's a commercial app, web app called marinetraffic.com for live ship tracking. And for example, yesterday it showed this vessel off the coast of Prudhoe Bay with some details. You can view a lot of information for free or pay for past ship tracks and things like that. So you can browse who's doing what, where, and when, see where and how research is concentrated. You can, really drill down to opportunities for coordination and find points of contact, follow links to more info, and hopefully identify co-location of activities or facilities, resources, and clarify directions. So remember, ARMAP for logistic spaces, AOV for observation sites. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for Bill?
So Bill, the cruise tracks that are in AOV, they're just a subset of what's in our ARMAP?
I think they're the same. Yeah, the ship tracks are in both apps.
Okay, so part of it, I noticed there was like only one Polar Stern ship track. So it's just people haven't submitted tracks from previous years?
Good question. So the ship tracks, I believe, are only those ship tracks that were funded with some NSF money.
Okay.
And every year, in about a month or so, we gather up the information that we can about funded cruises, and yeah, that's another kind of laborious process in that these different data sources for ship tracks don't have information that's compatible or don't release all the information or share it in one place. So that's kind of like what the ship tracks are, what what NSF has asked us to track down.
Bill,
we could add more.
Yeah.
Let's put some ship tracks on the wish list.
So getting the ship track information is always a struggle. But we have been talking with our ship partners a lot more in recent years. And I think there might even be interest in, the European vessel operators in having their cruise tracks published in ARMAP and AOV. I wonder if we could develop a template for collecting the information that we can send to them and have them fill out. Make it easy for them to give us what you need to ingest it into.
Yes. That's great. We can do that. Let's do that.
So maybe we can work on that. Because we've been talking a lot more with Polar Stern and Odin, and we work with the Canadians as well. So maybe we can get them to join.
Renee, do you know if there are if other countries have the same sort of thing as ARMAP or AOV?
I don't know of anybody who has that, because I've given this presentation at Barrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think so.
So then it offers an opportunity to pull together that international on a platform that already exists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There are recently some new inventories of networks, platforms, programs at the international level through EU, UNET, and I asked San, but they're long lists.
Oh yeah.
Or spreadsheets, and the information they presented is I think it's not in a compatible format. Yeah.
Bill, do you have any thoughts about kind of setting up web services so that, you know, through discussion with other groups, they could just upload the data in the format you want automatically?
Good. Yeah, that's right. So let's see here. Let me see if I can do something here. Give me just a second. There are a number of incredibly important efforts underway with planning and coordination in the Arctic data community towards interoperability. And we are working with those groups. And so that's right. That's ideally each funding agency or logistics provider or something like that creates web services that conform to some sort of, it doesn't have to be one standard, but conform to an existing standard that means that you can share the information with ease. And it can show up in multiple portals because that can be important. And you don't want to reinvent the wheel and then have to go back and change the wheel that you created. So Peter Pulsifer in particular with the IASK-SAN Arctic Data Committee and the IARPIC Arctic Data Collaboration Subteam, we're moving towards interoperability. And we've been kind of tooting this horn for a while with ADWIG and other groups, but at some point we will get to where there are compatible web services where the information is automatically updated and comprehensive. And so we have we have a number of public facing web services for ARMAP and new ones coming out soon for AOV. It's a matter of the community coming together and working out the interoperability of these live feeds.
I would just add that I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, that there's an important meeting of the Arctic Data Committee of IARPIC, Peter and Mark Stieglitz's group, and it is next week, I believe, or later this week. It is on the 28th, so day after tomorrow at 1 o'clock. So, and it relates to an NSF funded workshop, which is coming up in 2018 to bring together all, you know, to talk about it from a national and international perspective.
Yeah, and so, you know, a lot of these different working groups, this one and others, data information can be really helpful, but we don't have this silo, this wall between these groups and the data group. And so I think they are reaching out for this meeting on Thursday to get as many people from other teams to join us as possible.
Great.
This may be a really ignorant question, and I'm sorry because I know a lot more about ARMAP and AOV than I do. I don't understand why they are separate. Why aren't they combined? Because it seems like almost everything that you have in AOV is that you have in ARMAP is in AOV, except those places that don't take multiple observations. You know, just one. So maybe a ship track that only goes one place one time. I get that. But other than that, why wouldn't you just combine these?
I think that's a good point, so I know it's confusing, and I keep racking my brains about a better way to do it, and we could well, suggestions appreciated. So they're different in that there are different scales of information. ARMAP has like maybe just one project location, like for example, Barrow in a region, and yet that projects there will have many, many, many discrete instrumentation sites measured by GPS. You know, this is where the instrument is, where the flux tower is, or where the borehole is, or. But yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'd need to go on to both and spend a little bit more time. I do see the value of ARMAP because I think it gives more information about the site. So, you know, from a logistics point of view, I think ARMAP would be a very useful thing to be able to look at, particularly as Renee was saying earlier, constricting budgets, she can get on ARMAP with other program managers and they can look at what every site has available. But
that's right, I think. Yeah, so like if you want to coordinate on logistics, definitely go to ARMAP. If you want to see if somebody else has a particular instrument or sensor in an area, use AOV.
Okay, thanks. I guess it wasn't as stupid a question as I thought it was.
It's not.
It's not.
So Bill, I got another question. What's the potential for different base maps being imported into RMAP or AOV? You know, sort of like what PGC is doing with the, you know, the digital atlas or the Arctic spatial map.
So another good question. So because it's circumarctic, RMAP and also AOV shows the Arctic in a circumarctic view, and things would have been a lot easier if we could have just done it like Google Maps or something, where the Arctic is a horizontal band at the top, all the way from left to right, you know? So we had to do a circumarctic view, which meant making our own maps, and rather than just relying on what's readily available. We lost the satellite image circumarctic base map because GINA lost funding, and they had shared that base map, satellite imagery circumarctic, for free, but then they could no longer keep it free. And so, but the solution's on the horizon, and that is in a web browser, you know, Chrome or Safari or whatever, we can now do 3D, like Google Earth, but in a web browser. And that will also come with a variety of base maps available that other people, Esri makes and maintains. So this will be really good when we have different base maps to choose from and can, you know, tilt and zoom in and stuff. So that's ESRI, ArcGIS online kind of thing.
So if you buy Esri products, then you can utilize those base maps.
Well, we use Esri products because, you know, not only is it a good tool or platform, but it's free in academics and widely accepted by many. But these base maps and that tool will work in any web browser for anybody for free anywhere.
Is there any thought about integrating the offshore with the onshore? I mean, like, you know, Esri does a lot of marine GIS with, you know, multi-beam and stuff like that.
Well, that's in terms of base maps, or?
Yeah, so I mean, these cruise tracks, you know, we've got the cruise track, but if you can overlay it on the real bathymetry and things like that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that a shaded relief bathymetry will be available, whatever the suite of Esri base maps are available, which there is a big suite.
Because I think a lot of that goes to the Lamont database, the R2R, the rolling deck to repository. Do you guys talk to the what is it, IEAS, or there's a database at Lamont for ship tracks and for other data products?
We get most, I think, of our ship tracks from R2R.
Okay.
Some from other sources, I think. I could check with the one of the technicians involved.
Do you get ship tracks and material from the Arctic Ocean Observing System from Molly McCammon's shop?
We share information back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you know, that's an example where you can. It's okay to have different portals with different audiences and scopes, and AOS is you know, more focused on the marine and future planning and the marine offshore around Alaska. They do more than that, but that's kind of their focus.